10-minute murder.
When Nikki Whitehead, who went by Nikki, was only 18 years old, she gave birth to twin girls. She named them Jasmaya Kanisha and Tasmaya Janisha, Jas and Tas for short. When Nikki was 25, she met Robert Head, a 55-year-old truck driver. Nikki and the girls moved in with him shortly after they started dating. It's unclear at what point Nikki lost her daughters, but they spent much of their younger years under the care of their great-grandmother, Della Frazier. While living with Della, the girls were honor roll students and participated in Girl Scouts. Nikki was a bit sporadic and would randomly pop in to visit the girls, but she wasn't a consistent presence in their lives. All that changed in 2007. The twins were 13, and Nikki wanted a chance to be their mom. She requested custody through the courts. Her request was granted, although it may not have been the best decision. Jas and Tas complained that Nikki was too controlling and also a bit of a hypocrite. But are there any 13-year-olds that don't complain about their parents' rules? But their conflicts quickly escalated into physical altercations. The arguments resulted in court-mandated counseling and juvenile court appearances. With all the hostility in the home, Della Frazier was able to petition the courts and regain custody. Unfortunately, the arrangement with Della was only temporary. Most of the time, the courts make every attempt to keep families together that are willing to put in the effort. And in January of 2010, they once again awarded Nikki custody of the girls. Della protested the decision. Jas and Tas protested the decision, but the court stood by their decision for the girls to return to Nikki. However, this time, they put a 2-week trial period in place. During that trial period, Nikki was murdered. On January 13, 2010, a Rockdale County Sheriff's deputy happened to be driving through the Whiteheads neighborhood in Conyers, Georgia, where 2 distressed young women flagged him down as he was passing by. Jas and Tas were extremely upset and stated that they had come home from school and found their mother dead in the bathtub. When the officer entered the home, he was immediately hit by a strong smell of blood in the air. That metallic copper iron smell. There were pools of blood all around the living room and kitchen, so much blood that it had quit soaking into the carpet. There were lines of blood where the body had been dragged around and into the bathtub. It was splattered on the walls, furniture, and ceiling. The officer said it was by far the worst crime scene he had ever walked into. He found Nikki in that tub, right where the girls said she would be. Nikki had been stabbed 50 times. Her lungs were punctured, her jugular vein severed, and her spinal cord injured. She had also been bitten and punched. Jas and Tas were visibly shaken during the interrogation. The detectives were comforting and tried to console the teen girls. The twins described the crime scene that they walked into like something they'd only seen on a TV show. Initially, the police believed them, but as the crime scene was investigated, they couldn't find any signs of breaking and entering, leading them to believe that Nikki knew her attacker. The medical examiner even said that it looked like a crime of passion. That changed the direction of the investigation. They then decided to separate the girls, who had been questioned together previously. Once separated, the detectives began to doubt their stories. Their stories started to develop inconsistencies, and the account of what happened started changing. It was easy to confirm that the girls had not been at school all day. The girls also had been wearing gloves. It was January and cold outside, but even in the interrogation room, Jas and Tas left the gloves on. The detectives asked them to remove them, and it wasn't really a surprise to them to find scratches and bite marks covering their hands. But of course, the girls had an explanation for this. They claimed the scratches probably came from them fighting with each other. They also claimed that they both dealt with being nervous, and biting their hands brought some kind of calming relief. The explanations could have been true, The girls were known to physically fight, and some people do bite themselves or cut themselves to feel a sort of release. They couldn't say the girls' explanation was a lie or make them feel bad because of the reasons they gave, so they just continued their investigation through other sources. The girls were allowed to go with Della and continued to deny any involvement. Blood from the crime scene was collected and the DNA was tested. Nikki's boyfriend was cleared. His DNA did not match, although the DNA did produce matches. 3 matches to be exact: Nikki, Jas, and Tas, implicating the twins. They were present at the time of their mother's murder. In May of 2010, 4 months after Nikki's death, her 16-year-old twins, Jasmaya Kenesha and Tasmaya Janisha, were arrested and charged as adults with voluntary manslaughter, making false statements, and being in possession of a knife during a crime. The detectives placed microphones in the police cars in the event that the girls said anything incriminating after the arrest. The girls were angry, almost taunting the police. Jas kept asking about the bite marks. Tas questioned why she was being arrested if they had not found a murder weapon with her fingerprints on it, even challenging them to try to find it. In 2014, the twins finally quit denying any involvement and pleaded guilty, accepting a lesser charge. They were sentenced to 30 years in prison and sent to different prisons to serve their time. Now that the truth was out, they could give their account of what they say really happened on that cold and bloody January day. And this is it. Jas and Tas woke up late for school. They were fighting with Nikki about being late again. They said Nikki complained that they didn't follow her rules and she was angry. They claimed that she grabbed a pot and tried to hit them with it. At some point, she grabbed a knife and threatened them with that as well, while yelling. Jas said that Nikki lunged at her, so she grabbed the pot and hit her mom with it. Jas said that when Nikki fell, she latched onto her chest and bit her. Then Jas grabbed a vase and broke it over Nikki's head, so she would quit biting. Both girls started punching Nikki, but she was fighting back, scratching them and trying to bite their hands. Tas grabbed the knife off of the counter and started to stab Nikki. Eventually, Jas grabbed the knife from her sister and stabbed Nikki a few more times. They then dragged their mom's body into the master bedroom and put her in the tub. Nikki was still alive at that point. The girls said that she was yelling at them about how much she hated them and that they would go to jail for what they were doing to her. It's not documented how long she was in the tub before Jas and Tas flagged down the officer that happened to be driving by. They could have called the police at any time, but it appears they wanted to make sure she was dead and could not be resuscitated or helped. Della Frazier continued to stand by her great-granddaughters, describing them as loving girls. But Nikki's friends disagreed and said that they were not at all shocked by what the girls did. Could Jas and Tas really have been that different depending on if they were living with Della or Nikki? Did living with their mom really bring out the evil in them? Or did their great-grandmother just refuse to see it? We all have a breaking point, but that doesn't mean that we all are going to commit murder when we reach it. Matricide is fairly uncommon, the murder of a mother at the hands of her own children. Actually, less than 1% of all homicides are matricide related, and most of the time, when they are, the mothers are killed by a son. So what caused 2 16-year-old daughters to not only kill their mother, but to do so in such a violent and brutal way? We may never know exactly what happened, only the story the twins tell. According to the American Society for Positive Care for Children, 36% of women in the U.S. prison system were abused as children. And the numbers for children psychologically or physically abused every year are staggering. Yet there is very little research on how many parents live in homes with abusive teenagers. We know it exists, and we know it sounds like the relationship between Nikki Whitehead and Jas and Tas was violent, unhealthy, and chaotic. What we will really never know is who the real abuser was in this sad story that ended with such an uncommon murder. that is your 10-minute murder story for today, or one of the stories for today if you plan to binge. I'm Joe, the host, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to 10-Minute Murder. If you are new, make sure you hit subscribe. If you're not new, welcome back. I love you. Connect on social media. See the pictures of what we talk about here on the podcast. It's never gross and graphic stuff, though. If you like the show, leave a rating and review anywhere that's possible. A positive one helps the show grow so much, and let your friends and family know about 10-Minute Murder. Now, quickly, let's get to an email question from one of you that listens. Dear Joe, be honest with me. Do you already have your Christmas tree up? Becca in NYC. And Becca, yeah, it's up. It's fully up. It's been up for a little while now. Now, I didn't put it up until after Thanksgiving. I normally will do it before Thanksgiving, and that freaks everyone out for some reason. But if you're trying to catch me in a do I celebrate Christmas too early kind of a thing, yeah, I do. Christmas Vacation, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation is my favorite movie of all time, period. Not favorite Christmas movie or, it's my favorite movie of all time. I will watch it multiple times throughout the year when it's still warm outside. It can be 100 in the South, and I'll be watching Christmas Vacation. It's a little strange, I get that. But it's my favorite movie, and Christmas is my favorite holiday. So I celebrate early. I get it going pretty quickly, and I started with Christmas music. I've been doing that since probably September. Now, I do stop right at Christmas. I stop it all. I shut it all down. Right after Christmas is over, the tree's away. There's no more Christmas music, and I don't get cranked back up until a little bit later on into the new year. But I'm a little bit weird about it. I understand that. You thought you were going to get me, Becca, but then I turned the tables on you, and I admitted it myself. So, boom. If you've got an email question for me, joe@10minutemurder.com. Thank you so much for listening to 10 Minute Murder. Bye.